It is funny how silence can feel louder than a scream. For most people, a birthday is a day filled with phone calls, with notifications, with the voices of people who love you. For me, this year, my birthday was defined by the sound of my phone not ringing. I sat in my small apartment, staring at the screen. 11 in the morning. No message. 2 in the afternoon. Nothing. By 5 in the evening, the silence from my mother's phone was deafening. It was not that she forgot. My mother does not forget dates. She remembers every birthday of every neighbor, every distant cousin. No, this was a choice. A statement. It was just another Tuesday where I did not exist in her world. You see, in my family, I was the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who did not cause trouble, but also the one who did not get attention. My younger brother, Mark, was the golden child. He could do no wrong. If he got a C on a report card, it was the teacher's fault. If I got an A, it was expected. If he needed a car, my dad would co-sign a loan. If I needed help with textbooks, I was told to figure it out on my own. I spent my whole life trying to earn a seat at their table, trying to get them to look at me the way they looked at him. But the more I tried, the more invisible I became. My love language became giving, hoping that if I gave enough, they would finally give back. I would send birthday gifts to them. I would show up for every family dinner, even when I felt like a ghost in my own party. Last year, I hit a breaking point. I was drowning in a job I hated, living paycheck to paycheck, trying to make ends meet. I called my mom for comfort. I just needed to hear her say it would be okay. Instead, she sighed. She said, "Well, you have always been a bit fragile. Maybe if you worked harder like your brother, you would not be in this mess." That was the moment something shifted inside me. Not anger yet, just clarity. A cold, quiet clarity. I realized that if I wanted love, I could not beg for it. If I wanted respect, I could not borrow it. I had to build myself from the ground up alone. I stopped asking them for anything. I stopped volunteering information. I worked 3 jobs. I saved like my life depended on it. I learned about investing, about crypto, about real estate. I did not do it to get rich quick. I did it to build a wall of security around my heart. And now, 2 years later, I was sitting in my apartment on my birthday, staring at a silent phone. I had just bought myself a gift, a brand new Tesla, sitting in the parking lot downstairs. It was not just a car, it was a symbol. It was proof that the invisible daughter actually existed. And she was doing just fine without them. But they did not know. They still thought I was the struggling, fragile girl. And honestly, I was okay with that. I preferred the silence. Until the silence broke. The next morning, I woke up to a pounding on my apartment door. It was not the polite knock of a neighbor. It was urgent, aggressive. My heart jumped into my throat. I tiptoed to the peephole. It was my dad. My father never visited me. Ever. He lived 45 minutes away and considered that a cross-country trip. He stood there in his work boots and flannel shirt, looking impatient. I opened the door, confused. "Dad," I said, "what are you doing here?" He did not say hello. He did not ask how I was. He just looked past me into my tiny apartment, a slight grimace on his face. He said, "You left the mall yesterday, over on the west side?" I blinked. "Yeah," I said, "I was picking up a charger." He nodded, his jaw tight. He said, "I saw you. I was getting gas across the street. You got out of that car." He paused, letting the silence hang. "That was a Tesla, right? Brand new?" My stomach dropped. I had not planned this. I had not planned for them to find out like this. I was not hiding to be mysterious. I was hiding to protect my peace. Now, the peace was shattered. "Yeah," I said quietly, "it is mine." His eyes widened. For a split second, I saw something I had never seen before, confusion. He looked at my cheap sofa, my secondhand coffee table, and then back at me, trying to do the math. "How?" he demanded. "How do you afford a $90,000 car?" I wanted to say, by working, by sacrificing, by not having anyone to fall back on. But instead, I just shrugged. I said I saved. I invested. "It is fine, Dad." He laughed, but it was not a happy laugh. It was a nervous laugh. He said, "Fine is not driving a Tesla. Listen, your mom and we need to talk to you. Family meeting. Tomorrow night." 7 p.m. At our house. A family meeting. The phrase that usually preceded bad news or a request for money for my brother. I felt the old anxiety creep up my spine, but this time it was mixed with something else. Curiosity. I asked, why? What is going on?
He would not look me in the eye.
He just said, just be there. And then he turned and walked away, leaving me standing in my doorway, cold dread mixing with the warmth of the morning sun. I did not sleep that night. I ran through every scenario. Was someone sick? Was the house being foreclosed on? But why would they call me? I was the one they never relied on. The next evening, I drove my old, beat-up Honda to my parents' house. I left the Tesla parked in a garage 2 blocks away. I do not know why. Maybe I wanted to see their faces without the filter of the car. Maybe I wanted to be the old me for one last night. I walked into the living room. The air was thick with tension. My mom was sitting on the edge of her chair, wringing her hands. My brother, Mark, was slouched on the couch, looking at his phone, pretending not to care. My dad stood by the fireplace, looking serious.
He said, "Sit down."
I sat. My mom started. She used that soft, fake tone she uses when she wants something. She said, "Honey, we are so glad you are here. We have been thinking about the family a lot lately." I stayed quiet. Mark chimed in, not looking up from his phone. He said, "Dad says you bought a Tesla. That true?" I said yes. He snorted. He said, "Must be nice. Must be nice to have money to throw around." I felt a flash of anger, but held my tongue. Finally, my dad cut to the chase. He said, "Look, we are in a situation. Your brother, he has got a huge opportunity. A business partnership. It is the real deal, but he needs capital. He needs $50,000 to secure the deal." I looked at Mark. He had bounced from job to job for a decade. Every opportunity was the real deal. Every failure was someone else's fault. I said carefully, "That is great, Mark, but what does that have to do with me?" My mom leaned forward, her eyes glistening with fake tears. She said, "We were thinking we could help him, but we do not have the liquid cash. Our money is tied up in the house in retirement. But you have a $95,000 car, honey. You could sell it. You could buy something cheaper and give the difference to your brother. It is for the family." The room went silent. I looked at her. I looked at my dad. I looked at Mark, who was now staring at me with an expectant, almost entitled look. I said slowly, my voice barely a whisper, "You want me to sell my car? The car I worked 3 jobs for. The car I saved for years to buy. You want me to sell it so Mark can have money for a business that will probably fail in 6 months?" My dad's face turned red. He said, "Do not talk about your brother like that. This is about family loyalty." I stood up. I said, "Family loyalty? Where was family loyalty when I was eating ramen noodles for a month because I could not afford groceries? Where was family loyalty when I asked you to co-sign a small loan for school and you said no because I was a bad risk?" My mom stood up too. She said, "That is different. Mark has a family. He has kids. You are just one person." That was the moment. The knife went in. Just one person. That was all I was to them. An ATM they had just discovered existed. I grabbed my bag. I said, "I need to think about this." As I walked out, my dad shouted after me, "We are not asking. We are telling you. You owe this family." I got in my Honda and drove away, my hands shaking on the wheel. The betrayal was complete. They did not see me as a daughter. They saw me as a solution, a resource, a bank account with legs. I sat in my apartment that night, and for the first time in my life, I was not sad. I was not hurt. I was calm, deadly calm. The kind of calm that comes before a storm. They wanted to play games?
Fine.
I would give them a game they would never forget. They wanted to treat me like a bank? Then I would show them how a bank works. A bank does not give away money. It lends it. And when you do not pay back a loan, they take everything. I knew Mark. I knew his patterns. He was lazy, greedy, and impatient. If I simply said no, they would hate me, but they would move on. They would find someone else to guilt. But if I said yes, if I played along, I could expose them for who they really were. The next day, I called my dad. I put on my best shaky, uncertain voice. I said, Dad, I have been thinking. You are right. Family is important. I want to help Mark, but I cannot just give away the car. It is too much. I heard him cover the phone and whisper something to my mom. Then he came back, his voice suddenly warm. He said, That is our girl. What are you thinking? I said, I will sell the car. I will take the cash. But I am not giving it to Mark. I am investing it in his business.
I want a contract.
I want to be a silent partner. I get 10% of the profits and my investment back within 2 years. Silence. Then, muffled arguing. He said, Hold on. I waited 5 minutes. Finally, he came back. He said, Mark says that is ridiculous. He does not need a partner. I said flatly, Then he does not need my money. I am not a charity. If he wants a loan from the bank, he has to sign papers. Why should I be any different? More muffled arguing. Finally, my dad sighed. He said, Fine. Bring the papers over. I smiled. The trap was set. I hired a lawyer. I had a legitimate, ironclad investment contract drawn up. It looked professional, serious. I also had another document drawn up, a personal loan agreement with a massive interest rate and a clause that said if they defaulted, they would be responsible for my legal fees and any assets I deemed necessary to collect the debt. I did not show them that one.
Not yet.
I went to their house. Mark was scowling. My mom was wringing her hands. My dad was pacing. I presented the contract. I said, Read it. It says I give you $50,000. In return, I own 10% of the business. If the business fails, you owe me the money back personally, Mark. Mark sneered. He said, It will not fail. I said, Then sign it. He grabbed the pen and scrawled his signature without reading a single line. My dad and mom looked relieved. I said, I will have the money wired to your account by Friday. Good luck, Mark. As I walked out, I felt the power shift. They thought they had won. They thought they had manipulated the weak, lonely daughter. They had no idea what was coming. 3 months passed. I did not visit. I did not call. They were too busy enjoying the money to notice. I watched from a distance. Mark, of course, did not start a business. He rented a flashy office, bought a new truck, and took his friends out to expensive dinners. He was living the high life, pretending to be a big shot. The business was a front. There were no clients, no products, just debt. The $50,000 evaporated in 60 days. I waited. Finally, the calls started. First from Mark, begging for more money. He would say, The business just needs a little more time. Can you lend me 10 more? I said no. I said, Read the contract. You owe me a progress report in 2 weeks. He panicked. He started calling my parents. My mom called me crying. She said, He is in trouble. You have to help him. He says the business is not working. I said, Mom, my voice ice cold. I did not force him to sign the paper. He promised to pay me back. If he does not, I have rights. She asked, What rights? I said, Read the contract, and hung up. They did not know about the second document. They did not know that because Mark had defaulted on the business, I could now trigger the personal loan agreement. The one that made him personally responsible for the debt, plus interest. I sent them a letter via certified mail. It was a notice of default. It stated that Mark owed me $50,000 plus $10,000 in interest and penalties, and that if it was not paid in 30 days, I would be forced to place a lien on his assets. My dad called me screaming. He shouted, You cannot do this. You are destroying your brother. I said calmly, I am not destroying him, Dad. He destroyed himself. I just gave him the rope. The panic set in quickly. My parents, who had spent their whole lives protecting Mark, now faced a terrifying reality. Their golden child was about to be crushed by the weight of his own greed. And the one holding the weight was me, the daughter they had ignored for years. I received a frantic call from my dad one evening. His voice, usually so commanding and dismissive, now sounded shaky, almost broken. He said, We need to meet. At the house.
Now.
I agreed. But this time I did not drive the Honda. I drove the Tesla. I pulled into their driveway, the electric hum of the motor purring as I parked right next to my dad's old truck. I saw the curtain twitch. My mom was watching. I took my time getting out, smoothing my jacket, walking slowly up the path. I walked into the living room.
It was a disaster.
My mom was crying, tissues piled up next to her. My dad looked like he had aged 10 years. Mark was sitting in the corner, his head in his hands. He looked up at me, and for the first time in his life, he looked scared. Not angry. Scared. My dad asked, his voice a whisper, "What do you want?"
I said, "Sit down."
They all sat. I looked at each of them. I said, "You called this meeting.
What do you want?
My mom spoke first, her voice cracking. She said, "We want you to drop this debt. He is your brother. We will lose everything. He will lose his house." I looked at Mark. I said, "Is that true? Will you lose your house?" He nodded, unable to meet my eyes. I said, "Good." The room gasped. I said, "Let me tell you a story." I stood up. There was a girl in this family. She worked hard. She loved hard. She wanted nothing more than to be seen. But every time she reached out, she was pushed away. Her birthdays were ignored. Her struggles were minimized. Her successes were invisible. I pointed at my mom. I said, "You forgot my birthday this year. Not because you could not remember, but because you did not care." I pointed at my dad. I said, "You only came to my apartment because you saw a car you wanted to take." I pointed at Mark. I said, "And you signed a contract without reading it because you thought I was stupid. You thought you could take my money, and I would just disappear again." My dad stood up, his face purple with rage. He yelled, "You're a monster. How dare you do this to family?" I laughed. It was a cold, sad laugh. I said, "I am not the monster, Dad. I am the mirror. I am just showing you who you raised me to be. You taught me that love is conditional, that worth is measured by what you can give. Well, now I am giving you a lesson in consequences." I pulled out a single sheet of paper from my bag. The second document. The personal loan agreement. I said, "I have a proposal. I will wipe the debt clean. I will tear up the contract." Hope flickered in their eyes. I continued, "But on one condition. I want the deed to this house." Silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. My dad stammered, "What? The house? This house has been in the family for 30 years. I shot back, and I have been in this family for 28. You want to save Mark? Fine. Give me the one thing you actually value. Prove to me that family loyalty goes both ways. You were willing to sacrifice me to save him. Are you willing to sacrifice your house?" My mom burst into sobs. My dad looked broken. Mark just stared at the floor, defeated. For a long time, no one spoke. I watched them wrestle with a choice. Their love for their son versus their love for their security. And in that moment, I saw the truth. They were not bad people. They were just weak people. They loved Mark more because he needed them more. My independence, my strength, made me invisible. Finally, my dad spoke. He said, We cannot give you the house. It is all we have." I nodded. I said, "Then I will see you in court." I turned to leave. As I reached the door, Mark's voice stopped me. He said, "Wait." I turned. He looked up, tears streaming down his face. Not tears of sadness, but tears of shame. He said quietly, "She is right. She is right. I did this. I took the money. I wasted it. Mom, Dad, she is right. Stop blaming her." It was the first time I had ever heard Mark take responsibility for anything. My dad looked at Mark, then at me. The anger in his face melted into something else. Grief. He whispered, "We failed you. We failed you both. Him, by spoiling him. You, by ignoring you." I felt a crack in the ice around my heart, but I did not let it break. I said, "I am not asking for an apology. I am asking for accountability." My mom stood up, walking toward me. She begged, "Please, do not take the house. We will find another way. We will sell it and pay you back. Just do not destroy us." I looked at her, at the woman who gave birth to me, at the woman who forgot my birthday. I had won. I had them on their knees. The power was mine. And that is when I realized revenge felt good, but it did not fill the void. It did not make me feel loved. It just made me feel powerful. I reached into my bag. I pulled out the contract. And then I pulled out a lighter. I flicked it on. My dad gasped, "What are you doing?" I held the flame to the corner of the paper. The fire caught, and I dropped it into their empty fireplace, watching it turn to ash. I said, "The debt is gone." It never happened. They stared at the ashes, speechless. I said, "I do not want your house. I do not want your money. I just wanted you to see me. For once in your lives, I wanted you to look at me and see a person, not a resource." I walked over my mom. I took her hand. I said, "I forgive you, but I cannot be part of this family anymore. Not the way it is. I need to build my own life, with people who value me for who I am, not for what I can give them." She sobbed, clutching my hand. She pleaded, "Please do not go."
We will change.
I said, "I hope you do. For Mark's sake. For the sake of any future grandchildren. But I cannot wait around to see if it happens. I have waited long enough." I let go of her hand. I looked at my dad. He nodded, a silent acknowledgement of defeat and respect. I looked at Mark. He mouthed the words, "I am sorry." I walked out the door, got into my Tesla, and drove away. I did not look back in the rearview mirror. It has been a year since that night. I bought a small house in a new city. I started a business that actually helps people. I have friends who call me on my birthday, not because they want money, but because they love me. My mom still calls sometimes. She leaves voicemails. She tells me she remembers my birthday now. She tells me she is proud of me. Maybe it is genuine. Maybe it is guilt. I do not know. But here is what I learned. Revenge is a dish best served cold, but forgiveness is a meal you have to cook for yourself. I did not forgive them for them. I forgave them for me. So I could let go of the weight of their betrayal. They wanted a bank. Instead, they got a lesson. And sometimes, that is the most valuable currency of all.